Hey everybody, it's Greg here again. So today we have a Whirlpool Cabrio dryer, and it runs fine. I just did a couple cycles with it and clothes got nice and dry, but it is squealing, and the more you put into it, the more it squeals. So let's take it apart and find out what's going on. Okay, so I don't have all my tools with me. It kind of sucks, but that's all right. I'll show you guys how to do this. Usually for this, I just use a putty knife, but you can stick it in right on the sides here and push in. And there's little clips that will let the top come up. But because this one has the lint filter right up here, we'll take it out now. But so it has it at the top. So there's two screws, one there and one there, which I've already got out of here. And then the top can lift up. Move the door out of the way so it's straight with this, or else you'll end up hitting it, and that's no good. So just watch the wiring when you put this up, that it's not pulling too hard on the wiring, because you don't want to bust a wire or anything like that right now. Yeah, I'll take you guys to the back side here, and you can see what screws I'm talking about for taking off this front panel. Okay, so you got a little better shot. This is the front of the machine up here. So there's two bolts. Can't see them the greatest, but there's one there and one right there. They're 5/16 bolts. But before you take those off, undo this wiring. So all I ever do is take a little flat blade screwdriver, and you got to watch, don't stab yourself with this silly thing, but just get it into that little plastic clip and kind of pry it out. Some of these will have little push pieces on there, but this guy doesn't. So, okay, that's disconnected. So we'll take out these two bolts here. I'm using the drill today. It's a little faster. All right, so once we got those two out, the panel will want to fall forward. I would keep that door closed, because if it's open, it might hit you when it falls forward. So lean it forward just a little bit and then lift up on the panel, and it comes out of these little clips. So we'll just set that off to the side, and we'll go back to the front here. Okay, so we're back at the front. We're going to take out 4 screws on this front panel, in all 4 corners. Now you want to watch, maybe put your knee against it or something like that for this last one, because it's going to want to just fall right out. These top ones, because they have a slotted piece here, you can leave the top ones inserted a little bit if you want to do it that way. I don't usually bother, but you can. So just undo those a little bit and then lift it up and off there. So hold the drum and pull this front piece out of there. Sometimes it gets stuck on the bottom of the drum, because this front panel has rollers on it. Those rollers go under the drum, but sometimes they get stuck under the drum when we're trying to pull it out. So put that off to the side, and we will pull that belt. Okay, so I'll try to record this the best I can. You want to kind of hold up on the drum. Give yourself as much room as you can to get your arm in there. What we're going to want to do is take the belt off the motor pulley without the idler just snapping. So I try to hold that idler a little bit, take some of the weight off of it, and then disconnect it from the motor. Then we can pull this whole drum right out. All right, so with that drum out, I don't need the light anymore, but if you can see on these rear rollers, all this buildup that's on there, that can cause sound because all that hair can get into the actual bearing of the roller. So we're going to want to take those rollers off and clean all that stuff out of there. The motor, yikes. So all that definitely needs to be cleaned out of there. It's a pretty good blanket. That's some thick stuff. Look for pieces like that. This is part of the drum felt. So that could be an issue too. We'll have to have a look at that. Other than that, just cleaning it up. And we'll give these pieces a spin afterwards and just see if anything's making any noise. Okay, so keep the vacuum close because I'm still gonna have to pull off these rollers and clean behind them. Sometimes it's just easier with the vacuum. So this, the idler, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's get a little closer. Okay, so this is the idler right here. The belt comes and wraps around the motor and then wraps around this idler. This should free spin. This is actually really hard to turn. So it's just about seized. I'm going to pop it off just to see if it's wrecked the shaft too, I guess. Wow, that's really on there. Jeez. So sometimes, even in this case, you can clean up the shaft, clean up the inside of this idler. If it's not too wrecked inside, you can see after you try to clean it up. Maybe we'll try to do that a little bit. See where it goes. I can also see right here, there's a little bit of rust showing up. So that's probably going to make some sound because this rides up here all the time. And wouldn't doubt if that's making some sound. So I'll have to take this guy right off and put a little bit of grease in behind between these two pieces of metal, and that'll help that from ever coming back. Okay, so I just used some light sandpaper. Yeah, anything that's sandpaper like this, not too rough, will do a pretty good job. Emery cloth actually works the best, but I don't have any because I don't have my bag on me. So let's clean this shaft up and see what it looks like afterwards. I definitely want to make sure that all that black tar kind of stuff that was on there isn't going to be on there anymore. So it will rough up the surface a little bit, but make sure that little washer stays there because we'll definitely want that to be still inside there. So maybe take a piece of paper towel or something like that and just wipe off all the little filings and stuff that came off there. To clean the inside of the idlers, usually I just roll up a piece of sandpaper. It usually works pretty good. And then you can just run it through it. And we'll have a look what the inside of this guy looks like. So it's got a little bit of a shoulder on the inside there, but if it rides nice on here, I think we can use it still. So it's better, but maybe I'll keep going with the sandpaper inside the idler here. Try to get rid of that shoulder as much as I can. Okay, so I got it cleaned up a little bit more. Let's see how it, yeah. See, now it's actually freewheeling when you spin it. You don't want to use grease or anything really on these shafts. It will just attract dust. So once we put this belt and everything on, this will ride. It's a new groove. It'll make for itself and be pretty quiet. But I'm happy with that. So let's take these rollers off. All right, same deal with the rollers. It's got that little triangle clip to it. Try to get in there without poking yourself. A pick does work pretty good on those. So there's going to be hair and stuff on the shaft. Sometimes these are pretty tough to get off. They almost seem like they swell, but see, there's wear marks right there and there and there. So we're going to get rid of those with the sandpaper, doing the same thing we did with the idler. And yeah, we'll do the same thing to the inner of this wheel. It rides really fairly smooth, so we don't want to rough it up too much. Maybe sometimes what I'll do is grab a paper towel and just wipe this, because sometimes what you think is wear marks is actually a little bit of almost grease that comes from the metal on metal. So it sounds a little coarser when you first put it on. It's because you've wrapped it up a little bit and it has to smooth it out. The bigger thing we wanted was to just get all that hair and stuff out of there. That sounds great. So we'll do this other one. Same thing, little triangle clip. I found just getting one side off and then taking your screwdriver or whatever out of the way and then just working the rest of the clip off. If you do break them, they're not too expensive. But definitely if you do break one, get another one. Sometimes you can buy them with the actual roller. Sometimes you can buy them by themselves. Just depends on who's selling parts in your area, I guess. So this one, it was really good feeling. So I don't even think we have to. No, that sounds pretty good. So clip it back on there. Okay, everything's turning like it should. Okay, so with the drum, what we want to check, we can also check the belt too, make sure there's not a bunch of cracks in it and stuff. Belts are usually pretty good. They last a long time. So this piece here is called the felt. This is what makes it have a nice quiet ride, because there's just metal and you don't want metal running on metal, something like this. So the piece that we found in there was just a little piece. Someone could have changed the felt at one point in time because they seen that and just replaced it and left the broken off piece in there, because I don't actually see it anywhere, which is good. If this felt is falling off, there's actually a glue that you can get. It's a high temperature glue. It's usually orange, and it's kind of really sticky stuff. So you can glue that felt back on. You don't usually have to replace the whole felt. If it's fallen off, if it's ripped, you can try to glue it. Most of the time, it's just easier to get a new felt. So we can throw this guy back in and hook up that belt. Okay, so I would mark the front and back of the drum, just because in some dryers it matters and some it doesn't. But just in case your dryer is the one that does, I would just mark it. It's easier that way. So make sure all our clips and everything are all back on our rollers. Put this drum up here. I usually hold it with my head. It's easier because I have to be down here. So you can feel that belt. I always hook it on the idler first and then lift the idler until I can hook it onto the motor pulley. Once I get it on there, to make sure the belt and everything is seated right, I always turn these things a couple times. That way the belt will find its place that it runs on the idler. It'll find the place it runs on the roller. It'll find the place it runs on the rear rollers. You just want it to be in place. So the drum won't fall out, but just know that if you have this model of dryer, the drum kind of flops until you get the front little panel piece on. So we got 2 more rollers on this panel that we're going to take off and clean, and then we can throw that back on. Okay, so I'm just going to put it on the bench, make it a little easier for you guys to see. Like, look at this lint on there. That's a little excessive. So same thing, pull this little clip. Sometimes these clips can also get really brittle. So if yours starts snapping, and you have to go buy some, make sure you do everything before you go buy any, or buy enough to do the whole dryer, because if one's fairly brittle, more than likely they're all pretty brittle. So these shafts are nice. I don't see any high edges or anything, and that spins just great. So I don't need to do any sanding or nothing like that. I just want to get all that hair and stuff out of there, because right now it's probably not going to affect it too much. But what will happen is that hair will work itself in between the 2 metals, and hair is incredibly strong. It'll cut right through the metal. It's that strong, and I've seen that many times where there'll be a bunch of strands of hair in between the roller and the shaft, and just due to the heat from it riding on it, it cuts that metal right in half. Okay, so when putting this panel back on, I put the drum up into here first, and then kind of lift the whole thing. I've put these 2 screws back in the top here, so we can just hook it on, make it a little easier for me to show you what you can do. So you just lift the whole drum with the panel, because it's going to have to sit on top anyway. So once we got those in, then we can worry about getting the bottom rollers hooked onto the bottom of the drum. So the way I do that, and I do that the same way pretty much on most dryers, make sure you get all this extra lint and stuff out of here while you're putting everything back together, because we don't need that in there after cleaning everything all nice. So I just put pressure inwards and start to roll the drum. It will just fall right on, and that's how it pretty much almost always works. Sometimes it doesn't work quite that well, but once we get these 4 screws on, we're going to start turning that drum again just to make sure that the belt is seated properly. It's not twisted or turned on one side or something like that, because we don't want to put this all back together and then find out that we have to pull it all back apart. So I'll get these other 2 screws in, and we can put everything back together now. So make sure you're watching. There is different sizes of screws. The heads will all be the same. They're all the 5/16, but some of them are a little longer, and they're actually a little bit of a stronger bolt. Everything might not fit back together real nice because it's a fairly floppy tin object, so you might have to pull over one of the side panels to hit a screw in there or whatever, but it's nothing crazy. So the little clips I was talking about in the front are right down here and here. We want to hook this front panel back into those hooks, and then we can lean it back in and do up the 2 screws from the inside. So I will do that. Most of the time that panel's not too tough to put back on, but just depends on the shape of the clips. So there's more lint in here I haven't cleaned out yet, so I'll get that out of the way, and we will hook this panel back on. So you want to keep it fairly parallel to the machine. You can see the actual little holes that the clips sit into. I usually hook one side and the other. Sometimes it doesn't quite line up nicely depending on how level your machine is, but yeah, there it is. You want to do up your wiring, make sure you do that up, or else that's not going to read that the door is closed. So put these other 2 screws back in from the back here. If things are out a little bit, move them around, because like I said, it's a fairly floppy, tinny kind of thing, and it does need to be maneuvered a little bit sometimes in order to line up everything. This guy's going real good. So I think we'll be, with what we did with that idler, I think we'll be in good shape, because that is going to cause a lot of squeaking sounds. So we go to lower the top. Like I said, make sure that electrical is done back up. Open the door so the panel doesn't hit it when it comes down. And then push the panel down onto those clips. Now we'll put those 2 screws up here, and we can give this thing a test. Okay, so it's just 2 Phillips screws. Hold on to them tight at this point, because if you drop it down this chute, you have to go through the back and take apart the blower in order to get that screw back out. So make sure you do not drop that screw. If you do, I'll show you. I'm going to go into the back anyway, make sure it's all clean and stuff in there, but I'll show you where your screw will end up. So we can put this filter back in here for now, and we'll spin it around. Maybe what we'll do is we'll give it a run first, because it was a noise problem, not a heating issue or anything. I just want to make sure that that's gone before we move on to heating. So I'll just plug her into the wall here. And if I didn't say this before, during that whole thing, long before you pop the top up or any of that, unplug the machine, because we don't want to be dealing with direct electrical like that. So push that power button, just put it on a normal cycle. Actually, we can put it on a time dry, because then it's not going to kick out on us. Time dry will always be high heat. We don't really care about anything else. We just want to hear how it sounds. So we'll start that up, and this has no vent or nothing on it, so the air coming out is a little bit louder than normal, but the machine is so quiet. It's crazy. So yeah, that idler was what caused the big sounds like that. What I'll do is I'll throw a couple loads through this, a couple wet loads, blankets and things like that, and just test it, make sure that it actually runs pretty quiet. So now that we know everything is running good like this, I'm going to flip it around and take off the back. Okay, so when I ran the machine, I also checked after it was done that the machine was heating, and it was heating fine. But whenever I get one of these dryers that I want to clean up to resell, I like to clean it out everywhere. So we're going to do that right now, and I'll show you what goes on this dryer. So it's got a bunch of 1/4-inch bolts just around the perimeter. You'll see them everywhere. I think there's 9 or 10 maybe. Of course, that one's in behind the panel, so I can't actually get on the thing. I'll show you how I deal with that. That happens quite a bit in appliance stuff because everything is so tinny. The bolts can just go right through the panels. So put all those. How many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that would be 10. So yeah, that is how many we had. Let's see if this will come off nice. It might not. Oh yeah, there we go. So now we can actually take this bolt out, put it aside. When we put it all back together, we'll put that back where it should be. So you have to lift the cord up over the panel because it runs right through it. And we just pull back on that panel. So I can see already there's a lot of lint in here. Probably more than there was in the front. So one of the big things I want to take apart is this piece here. So this is where it vents out to the wall, which is connected directly to this guy. So what happens is the heat comes through a port right here, goes into the dryer, and then it comes back through this little blower, which circulates through that filter and then comes down and gets pushed out the wall. So there's going to be, that filter will catch most of the stuff, but I bet you there's going to be a lot of stuff built up down in the blower here. So we'll take this panel off. We have to take those 2 screws out from the top, like the ones we just put back in. We have to take those 2 out because they hold this piece in. And then we'll just take out these other 4 screws and we can pull that apart. So I think I'm actually just gonna pull these 4 right now. The thing won't fall right out. It's actually needs a little bit of maneuvering to get it out once all the screws and bolts and everything are all out. just make sure if you drop any screws or anything, pick them up, because parts like this you do not want to put back together missing screws. Okay, so we got those 2 screws out. Now, I also took the lint filter out because it can be in the way. So we just got to kind of lift this over this little bottom panel piece here, and then you can start pulling it out while you guide this out from the machine. It's usually fairly easy to do, but sometimes it can get hung up. Okay, so this is kind of disappointing. I can't get this thing fully out. There's a couple screws that hold this little piece to this big piece, and they're in a spot that you can't actually get to. But I can't get the little clips past there to get this out. So I don't want to wreck things. So what I'm going to do is leave it like this. I can see everything that I need to clean. All this stuff in here, you definitely need to clean. All this stuff in the blower wheel, like that needs to get out of there. Sorry, I'm breathing so heavy now. I was flipping the machine all over the place. But let's get this vacuum going. And all right, so enough of that noisy stuff. Thing cut me, bugger. So putting it back in, I want to make sure that this is a blower wheel here. This is what attaches directly to the motor. There's a shaft that goes from the motor to the blower wheel. So when the motor spins, this is pushing air out through the vent. So I'll kind of guide this this thing back in here. Hopefully it goes in nicer than it half came out. But yeah, everything's all vacuumed up. These pieces here, if you see a piece of this foam insulation hanging into the blower there, just take it off. We don't want to take off the whole thing, because this does seal it a little bit. But what we don't want is that foam getting into the blower wheel, because it can cause sounds, or it can cause that blower wheel to warp, and then you need a new blower wheel. So we definitely don't want to do that. Hopefully this thing goes back all nice, which I don't think it is going to. So I'm gonna see what I can do here. Okay, so I got it back on. It was not easy. I actually had to pop the top. On this model, there's those 2 screws on the top, which hold on a plate to the front of this guy, but they both can't come through the back at the same time. So if you undo those 2 screws, you can pull just this part right out. But I don't even think you really have to bother. If you undo these 4 screws, you can pull it back enough that you can get in there and do what you need to do. But yeah, we got it. What a nightmare that was. Okay, so I'm just gonna throw this back panel back on. I'm not gonna bother doing much with doing anything really with the heating system, because it's working great. So this panel has to fit around the vent piece here, and I'm gonna line up all these screws. So I usually just hit one of them if I can, and the panel kind of rests on there's a little clip that sits on top of the bottom panel. You'll see what I'm talking about when you take yours out. But yeah, you just get it sitting back on there. It'll hold itself now, and we can run in all these screws. all of them. If you are using a drill, be careful. Don't torque down on these. This thing isn't driving down the highway or anything. It doesn't need to be ridiculously tight. But you want to make sure it's tight enough that it's not going to be vibrating. You don't want it rattling and stuff after you get everything back together, because you're probably going to go looking for things that aren't actually a problem. I've seen a lot of these panels, being also as tiny as they are, they can vibrate quite a bit, especially if one or more of these screws is stripped out. Just kind of flops there anyway. So, got the screws back in, and one just above the water line part here. There we go. And one just above the water line part here. There we go. So that's all of them back on. Now what we'll do is we'll spin it back around and I'll run it for a little bit. Make sure that it's still heating. Let it clear out all the crap that I've been stirring around. Because what will happen now is the heater will have a bunch of dust in it and it's going to want to burn that off. So it will stink a little bit once you start this thing up, but that'll go away pretty quick within about 10 minutes. Yeah, then we'll throw some clothes in here. Check that the squeak or squeal or whatever the heck it was is now gone. And then this guy's good to go. Okay, everybody. So yeah, if your machine is making some kind of squealing, squeaking, things like that, more than likely you're going to have to take it all apart. It's, I'd say 90% of the time, going to be either the rollers or the idler or both. But while you're in there, you might as well take apart, all the rollers and stuff like that, and clean up the shafts, put it all back together. That way everything is starting off at square one and you're good to go. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.